Okay, welcome to another episode of Pound for Pound Box Report, episode 162. If you're listening to us live, I want to apologize for the delay, computer issues on my end. I am your host, Michael. Joining me this week, Daniel from the Inscriber, Jacob from Jack Boxing. What's going on, fellas?
What's going on?
Good evening.
News of Pound for Pound Box Report. Once again, Pound for Pound Box Report, a live YouTube show, as well as podcast and blog discussing all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if we're concerned with boxing, we will talk about it. If you don't find all information regarding Pound for Pound Box Report, please go to the blog page, p4pboxreport.wordpress.com. That's the link. You check the right of the page. We'll provide the links to find our pages on, find the YouTube channel as well as our pages on G+, Facebook, Tumblr, as well as our Twitter handle, which is at P4P Box Report. Also, check the right of the page. You'll find where to listen to us on SoundCloud, Google Play Music, Player FM, Stitcher, iTunes. Let's get the show started. Recapping what went down last week. I guess the biggest fight was between, well, no. Let's start ladies first, to quote Queen Latifah. Claressa Shields making some beer last week on Friday in Detroit. First woman to headline a card on a major network, cable network, fighting Szilvia Szabados. Shields scoring a fourth round stoppage. Szabados, she was tough, she was resilient, but the size of Shields was apparent, as well as the skill of Shields was apparent as she dominated throughout the bout, scoring a fourth round stoppage over Szabados. And I'll go to you, Jacob, first. Talk about the fight itself as well as the significance of this fight vis-a-vis women's boxing.
Yeah, first of all, I want to give a big up to Showtime for showing that on TV and making it a headlining bout. I know the place was hopping and I believe they had a sellout crowd. So, she was close to her hometown of, I believe it's Flint, Michigan. So, that's a great thing, I think, for women's boxing, first off, to get that exposure. And a lot of people were talking about it on Twitter. But the fight, I mean, I didn't know too much about Szabados, but, she was very tough. Claressa was hitting her with some hellacious shots. And, she kind of, I think it took a little while to get into her groove, but she started to get there. And maybe there was the nerves of fighting, in front of the home crowd and headlining a card and being on TV. I know she's, double gold winner back to back. So she's used to a lot of that. But I thought she did a good job. And I look forward to seeing her back on and showcasing her skills. And hopefully she, can headline a couple more cards this year.
Your impressions of the fight, Daniel, and just the overall event.
The overall event, you kind of knew, like I said, it's pretty much the same thing we were the way we're going to talk about later on. You knew the crowd was only there for the main event. So you knew that event was just mainly they were baiting a little bit in anticipation for what the main event was going to be. And like I said, and there were a couple of decent fights on Showbox and then a terrible one beforehand. But the atmosphere when she came into the ring, you can tell how much Claressa Shields means to that community, that Flint, Detroit area. And then when they came to the fight herself, you got to give Szabados credit. She can take a punch. The problem, though, is what ultimately wound up with Harvey Dock stopping the fight was that all she could really do was take a punch, particularly the left hook. That left hook by Claressa Shields was open all night for her.
Yep.
And like I said, that the punch that ultimately had Harvey Dock saying no was the left hook. The way Szabados' head snapped back, even though she didn't go down, it was still enough where you can say this is too much for your own good. It's too much.
Arguably, her eyes rolled back if you look at it.
Yeah,
for a split second.
That's what she did, and I like I said, I commend her fight or her spirit for really trying to get up and fight to show Harvey Dock that I'm still willing to go. I'm still willing to fight. But at the end of the day, that was just too skilled. And I did like that. I also did like that some of the people that I expected to be there were there. Like Tommy Hitman Hearns was there. Claressa Shields' two teammates on the Rio 2016 team were there. So I'm glad to show some support. I am a little bit surprised though that some of the other like prominent female boxers, like the young ones going in, I'm surprised. I'm really surprised that I can understand flight issues, but I'm surprised that like a Katie Taylor wasn't there, or either the Serrano sisters weren't there, given the scope of the event. But
was Durrell's? The Durrells were there, right?
Anthony, I think Anthony Durrell was there. So, like I said, the Michigan community was there. But I'm surprised there wasn't a larger contingent of women boxers that were there, because say what you want, one of the vehicles that's going to drive women's boxing back to the forefront is Claressa Shields. And yes, this is her second fight, but yeah, just think about that. It's her second fight, and she was headlining a premium cable card. When have you heard before, even in men's boxing, a guy in his second fight, not named Lomachenko, headline a premium cable card?
Moving forward, where does she go from here? And any of you guys can respond.
I mean, I'd like to see her get some significant fights and just kind of stir up the division. I think there's, women's boxing, it has a lot of, talent, I think, that can make for some exciting fights. So hopefully, they can get her back on, another card, headline a card. I'd love to see, a mainly, if not all, but a mainly woman, card, maybe like a triple header. With some of the fighters that Showbox has featured. I think that would be fantastic. But I'm going to speak for the one thing that I know Gail would want me to bring up is that, hopefully they can get those 3-minute rounds. They have the talent and they have the ability to entertain and box just like the men. So there's no reason that they can't do that. But again, she's I think gone through enough of the win back-to-back golds. She's done enough to be able to escalate it to the next level. And so as tough as Szabados was, I would like to see a little bit of a more of a chess match or a more evenly matched fight. So I think she's ready, and I think she's willing. And I'm not. You guys might have to educate me here. I'm not sure. Is she officially signed with someone?
No.
Okay, so that is criminal in itself. I don't know. You have people like I think Golden Boy. You signed a couple. I think prominent women fighters, but I just don't know why she isn't getting the love that she should be. I think she has potential to be a superstar in that division for women's boxing, and I'm not sure why she's not getting that taste. But hopefully, if she can step up the competition and fight more and more, and she can get showcased on these cards, then people will start talking more and more about her.
Thoughts, Daniel?
One of the things that Shields is actually going to face a little bit is the fact that some of like the other big names are below her as far as weight class. Like I mentioned the Serrano sisters, both of them are below her. The fighter, I think that Gail mentioned, Marlon, she's below her in thinking weight class. And see here, thinking like a Heather Hardy's, like a good fighter, is below her, I think, weight class. So she's going to have a little bit of a hard time finding decent opponents. But the main thing, and I think I got to give, Gus credit when it comes to what she's doing, and I think you mentioned it before, is Al Heyman has steered a lot of boxers away from long-term promotional deals, especially for young fighters, because we have seen in the past, is one of the sad tales of boxing, actually. Young fighter gets signed by a promoter and doesn't realize the promoter tricked him into signing his life away. When it comes to money, when it comes to the length of the contract. And Shields may be smart to say, I don't want to sign long-term right away. Let me build my name up and let the promoters come to me. The problem with that is, unfortunately, if you make yourself not known or not make yourself feel like promoters, you don't need them, they'll believe it eventually. Either one of them is gonna back a brains truck to promote her, or they're just gonna say, fine, you do you. And we've seen plenty of fighters go that route and not really end up pretty well. Like only a handful of fighters can legitimately go on their own and still be successful at this day and age in the sport. But I do see Claressa probably fighting again fairly soon, because I don't think she's that person that really doesn't like long layoffs. And ultimately, like I said, it's getting to me, but I think I'm pretty much now on par with Gail, where that fight flew by. Because it was a 2-minute rounds. That fight flew by. I didn't realize it was the 4th round until I had to look at the TV. It felt like that should have been the 3rd round.
Right.
So now I understand it is up to the sanctioning bodies. They have to agree to the rules, but yeah, 3-minute rounds. You make an argument that women get more tired easily. Like, really? We just saw Claressa Shields clobber somebody pretty effectively for what is essentially 3.5 rounds.
Let's move on and talk about, look, while Shields and Szabados was the history-making kind of fight of the weekend, much of the talk was about the fight that took place the following evening in Verona. David Lemieux fighting Curtis Stevens, middleweight bout. And look, I thought that this had a chance to be kind of disappointing and a bit of a snoozer. And boy, was I wrong. Lemieux taking out Stevens basically with 1 shot in round 3. Here's the thing. Stevens got off to a slow start in the 1st round. Kind of surveying the scene, I thought, okay, he just didn't have it. But starting in the 2nd and the 3rd, he started to come on. And it looked like it was really going to be a terrific fight. And then within the midst of an exchange, Lemieux, I believe, with his back close to the ropes, landed a terrific hook. They're kind of simultaneous punches thrown at the same time, simultaneous hooks. It's just that Lemieux got there first. And no, I think Stevens back to the ropes. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And Lemieux got there with the hook first, and Lemieux was out. He was out cold before he hit the canvas. Stevens was out. He was out cold before he hit the canvas and stayed on the mat for a while. Scary looking. Fortunately, Stevens, who was taken to the hospital, checked out okay. But I'll go to you on this one, Daniel. No doubt, Lemieux's KO of Stevens, candidate for knockout of the year.
It is certainly a candidate. I've seen some people try to say it should be the leader. There's good points and bad points going to that when you compare it to the Mikey Garcia knockout as a Zichanin. But we can save that for the 9 months from now when we actually have to crown the knockout of the year. But I knew this fight was not going to last long. I think I even said it I think I said it was going to be most likely a third round knockout because these two genuinely don't like each other. They genuinely don't. And it showed a little bit when Lemieux just pretty much from the get-go went for the knockout. Now, Stevens under Don David Jackson has shown a lot of improvements for his boxing, as far as trying to measure distance with the jab and counter-punching well. But the problem is with when it comes to David Lemieux, you have to be able to outbox him and outpunch him at the same time. And you have to do it effectively too. Stevens was starting to outbox him, but it was pretty evident as Stevens was even landing some nice little left hooks of his own that he was not going to be able to outpunch Lemieux. And that showed in the third round. Now, perfect sequence of hooks. Now, granted, Stevenson's mail fell more around the neck, but if you want a really, really good comparison to that, with somewhat different results, it's kind of like the Danny Garcia punch that took out Amir Khan the first time. The main difference is that Lemieux knew how he was throwing the punch. Garcia threw that punch blind. Lemieux kept it short, compact, and yeah, you kind of knew as soon as Stevens touched the ropes that he was out. And it's not only, like I said, it's knockout. It's one of the scariest knockouts I've seen in a while. Because I think people in Stevenson's corner said that he spent more than 2 minutes unconscious before he was even able to get up and recognize where he was at. So looks like it's a great win for David Lemieux. He gained regional belts for the IBF, WBA, and the WBC. No, actually, no, sorry, not the WBC, the WBO. So that does put him into the picture to get a rematch with Golovkin, or even try to sneak in to get a fight with Saunders. But after that, I don't think Billy Ho will want to be facing David Lemieux anytime soon.
Here's the thing, and I'll go to you, Jacob. While there was a lot of talk about that punch and the way that it just short-circuited Stevens, a lot of discussion afterwards was the weight of Lemieux, who put on, I believe, 17 pounds between weigh-in and actual fight. Many feel he got an unfair advantage. Discussion afterwards on HBO, on their broadcast, Roy Jones was like, he had no real problem with it. It's an advantage you should take care of. So talk about that, the fight itself, and talk about Lemieux putting on so much weight. Lemieux, by the way, who didn't look in tip-top shape. I don't care what he says. But the ongoing discussion about fighters putting on 10, 15 plus pounds and the advantages that they gain from that between weigh-in and what they in actual fight.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not in favor of it. I hate it, because you're not fighting in your division anymore, and that I don't care what anybody says. It gives you an advantage. So, I mean, if we were talking about the level playing field, Lemieux is only 2 fights removed from not making weight and having to cancel a card. I think it was against De La Rosa or something in Canada. And there was talks that he struggled to make weight for this fight. And, hydrating up to, potentially almost 180 pounds. I mean, that's I just don't like that. To me, I wish there was same-day weigh-ins. I wish there was a limit on rehydration. He's going to have some trouble because I believe the IBF, if he were to get a rematch to try to get back his belt, I believe that's in their clause, right? They can only rehydrate so much. I think it's a stipulation within the IBF that you can only gain 10 pounds. Yeah, 10 pounds.
Yeah. Only 10 pounds, yeah, but it's only for world title fights, not regional belts.
Right. Well, but he held so that was the belt that he lost to Golovkin, right? It was the IBF?
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, if he were to fight Golovkin again, which I still think we'd get the same results, but you know, he'd struggle. I mean, there's a chance that fight doesn't happen, or they have to take some, you know, side money, or he gets, you know, something. But I mean, one of my biggest pet peeves is fighters not making weight. If you know you're not going to make weight, don't make contracts for that division. You need to either move up or, you know, do what you have to do. I understand you want to get an advantage, but, like, you know, let's make it fair. And you know, somebody can get hurt, like seriously hurt, you know, when you have that big of a disparity in weight, and, you know, they're getting hit by these big punches, especially if you're known as a big puncher. But I mean, to talk about the fight a little bit, I thought Stevenson was having his best round of the fight until he got knocked out. He had some, you know, he was doing kind of that, you know, high guard, let Lemieux kind of punch, and then, you know, look for his moments, and he had a couple of them. So unfortunately, you know, he got caught, and it happens to the best of them. And you know, I really thought he was starting to come on. So, but I'm gonna take, you know, one also, Mike, because I thought it would be a boring fight, or potentially could be a boring fight. But, you know, Lemieux did what he had to do. But to me, this is actually a consolation, or the potentially next step would be a Canelo fight. Canelo and Lemieux are both promoted by Golden Boy, and I just don't feel that, as much as Oscar says that we're gonna get a fight this year with Triple G, I just don't see that happening. I think he's gonna try to protect him as much as he can, and we all know Canelo rehydrates to about the same as you know, what Lemieux does. So I mean, that's a fight that they can make, you know, some excitement there because of the whole, you know, punching power and the popularity of Canelo, and, you know, make some easy money for Golden Boy, because based on their finances, they're not doing anything except with Canelo. Canelo's their only golden goose, and they're not going to be willing to risk that against a Golovkin or Jacobs, whoever wins this Saturday.
So say he doesn't get Golovkin a rematch, or Canelo. Where does he go? Because I don't know if Billy, to Daniel's point, if Billy Joe, I'm not gonna call him Billy Ho, not yet, in spite of his last fight. Where does Lemieux go from here?
Yeah, I don't think Billy Ho is not going to fight him. I doubt that, especially after his last performance.
Yeah, that's the big question, Mike. That's the big question. You have any ideas, Jacob?
I mean, there's Monroe is out there, because Gabriel Rosado, who he already beat, fought Monroe, and that was supposed to be an eliminator to fight Canelo, but then he ended up fighting Smith because it was such a horrible fight. Monroe I can maybe see, but I mean, I don't know what that does. The fact is that middleweight is very weak. It's a weak division. You know, Golovkin is in probably one of the weaker divisions at one of the weakest times of the division. So, you know, I don't know. I mean, you have people like I think Charlo moved up, right?
And Charlo, Jamal, I believe, was recently ranked number 2 by the BC in their latest rankings, by the way. So go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah, I would love to see that fight. I just don't know that happens because of the Golden Boy Al Heyman thing, and especially because I think that Charlo's last fight was promoted by Schaefer, which is Golden Boy's bitter, you know, rival. So I mean, I just don't see that coming together. I mean, I would love to see that fight. I would love to see Charlo, you know, take on a puncher like Lemieux. But unfortunately, you know, with all these politics, there's a lot of fighters I'd like to see him match up with, but they're in other stables. There's not a whole lot of people, you know, he can fight. So I don't know. He's kind of in a no man's land.
I would talk about the Gamboa bout on the undercard, but I wasn't moved by that at all.
Garbage.
Wasn't really impressed by that from what I see from Gamboa. So no offense, but there's no need to talk about it. Let's move on. Demetrius Andrade, been off a while. Arguably could be the best at 154. Problem is he hasn't been active. Some of it because of his own doing. Fought over in Germany against Jack Culcay. A rematch they fought in the amateurs. Andrade scored 12-round decision, split decision. I didn't think the 116, 112 on 2 scorecards, 115, 114 for Culcay. That scorecard for Culcay I thought was kind of bogus. I had Andrade 8-4 range winning, in agreeing with the 2 judges that scored in his favor, 116, 112. Andrade, to me, he built too much of a lead early. He built a big lead early. Landing good shots, landing jabs, going to the body really well. Culcay came on towards the end, but I believe it was too little, too late. This sets up Andrade for a shot against Lara. I believe this makes him the mandatory contender now. Well, it does make him the mandatory contender because he wins a version of the WBA belt at 54. Let's hope it happens. We will see. I think Lara has said he wants Andrade in the ring, wants to fight him. I'll go back to you, Jacob. Your thoughts on the win itself and the future Andrade. Will we see this bout against Lara later on this year?
I sure hope so. I mean, for all the talent and promise that Andrade has, you know, I hate the inactivity. That's another one of the things I just don't like. I mean, I'd rather just be in there and fighting, and you know, but unfortunately, you know, he does a lot of talking, not a lot of fighting. But you know, the fight, I had him, you know, split decision was total garbage. I mean, he won that fight, but you know, he didn't, in my opinion, didn't win it as comfortably as he should have, and that makes the Lara fight very interesting, based on the styles, the contrast of styles, and just whether I have some doubts about Andrade if he's just has that finishing desire. He seems sometimes to coast at times, and I think that could potentially get him into trouble. You know, you can build up a lead, but when you leave it in the hands of the judges, you know, this is boxing. Anything can happen. We've seen crazy cards or scorecards turned in, and everybody knows that, you know, this fighter won or that fighter won. But, you know, Lara, you know, he's a skilled guy, and I'd love to see that fight, but I don't know what the things with Andrade and him just talking and you know, not fighting, that concerns me, and I feel like his prime is maybe starting to slip away. So I hope he fights a bunch of times this year. You know, it's been a great year for boxing, you know, so far. So it'd be a fight that I'd be super interested in seeing. But I'd probably pick Lara right now if I had to pick.
I hope Andrade's prime is not slipping away. I mean, he's only 29. He hadn't had that many fights. He has not had many punishing bouts. I would assume he's still fresh. And I'll go to you on this one, Daniel. Your impressions of Andrade after this win.
After this win, number one, I kind of feel he had a little bit of jet lag going to Germany, especially in the weekend where he's going to come back and lost an hour due to daylight savings time. But it was a fight I pretty much saw Andrade winning, and winning pretty handily. Like, Culcay came back toward the end, but luckily it wasn't enough for the typical German buffoonery that happens in judging. But in that sense, when you look at it, when you look at the fight, when you look at the opponent, when it comes to Lara, I do really hope that they make the fight. But the problem is that Andrade and his team, they do stupid things. That's the thing, to put it bluntly, they do stupid things. Like listen to Jay-Z and then wind up having your title stripped. So I do hope that he does fight Lara this year. He could have fought him without doing this, technically. But he chose to try to go this route, I guess, to make it somewhat official. That Lara has to face him. But even as he's slowing down, Lara is still one of the best defensive fighters in the sport. And he can still probably give Andrade problems. And I just really, really hope it does happen. I really hope there's not a situation where something either with his promoters or his managers winds up having that mandatory spot taken away from him. Because like I said, we've seen him be stripped of a title because he listened to bad advice. And hopefully he doesn't take in this route because first, he's been an actor for a very long time. Number two, he had to go to Germany to get this shot. And number three, yeah, and when it comes to boxing, unless your name is Mayweather or Pacquiao, once you hit 30, you can pretty much say that your prime's gone out of it. So I really do hope we get the fight Andrade this year, because apparently, with all due respect, he's probably the best junior middleweight that's not affiliated with Heyman.
First of all, I want to give a shout out to Bernard from Truth and Facts and Boxing, as well as the Movie Podcast. He's listening to us now live on YouTube, and I'm commenting on there. If you please, you want to check us out live on YouTube, just please do so. I left the link on the Pound for Pound Twitter handle. So if you want to do that, please do. And please make sure to comment. Move on and talk about, I don't know if you guys saw this bout, these two bouts in Mexico, lower weight bouts in Mexico City, I believe. Juan Francisco Estrada fighting his second fight at 115, scored a 5th round stoppage over a fighter by the name of Salas. We talked about Luis Nery on the past 2 episodes, fought an eliminator against Jesus Martinez, and Nery scoring a 4th round TKO. Want to talk about Nery first. I'm going back to you, Daniel. Look, as I said, we've talked about him before. Gus, who's unable to make it this evening, thinks very highly of him. I do as well. Nery only 22, but look, he's a come-forward fighter, but he does so with skill, not in the typical Mexican way. I mean, how many quote-unquote Mexican fighters do you know that employs kind of a modified turtle shell shoulder roll? He does that all the while trying to knock your head off. He distributes his punches very well to the head and body. He's now a title shot with Yamanaka is up next. And all I have to say is that is going to be a tremendous fight. One of the fights of the year of 2017, whenever it happens.
I caught bits and pieces of it. Because I got focused a little bit more on the Estrada fight, given, like I said, the magnitude of what the Estrada fight could mean. But yeah, this kid can bang. This kid not only can bang, but you're starting actually to see a little bit of a shift in Mexican boxing, I've noticed. From full-blown come forward, or guys like in the mold of a Barrera or a Morales, to becoming more, they're still coming forward, but they're a lot more defensive oriented. And he's one of those people that's heralding that now, where you're becoming more defensively sound, but at the same time, you're still better offensive minded, which is a tough balance to really, really master when you're a Mexican fighter, because they either expect you to be Morales, Barrera, Chavez, or the worst thing that could probably happen to you is you wind up like Miguel Vasquez, who, for all the skill that he had, is known as a blatant runner. This kid has a pretty decent future, and consider what Yamanaka did in this last fight. That's going to be a nice little fight that Japanese fans are going to enjoy, because, yeah, we know that fight's going to be Japan. Like, the money guy is Yamanaka. So Japanese fans are going to enjoy a hell of a fight whenever it happens. It might just, actually, Mike, it might just be one of those fights that happens in that new Japanese tradition of fighting on New Year's Eve.
I doubt that. I doubt it was. I believe it will happen sooner. He's been kind of no. I don't think they'll wait that long. I don't think Nery's handlers will make him wait that long. I anticipate this bout happening sometime this summer in Japan. He's primed. He's ready for it now. I believe Yamanaka's they want the fight too. They're not going to avoid this. I just can't wait to any of the bout of his bout, Nery's bout. Jacob, your impressions?
I actually didn't catch it, but I need to obviously catch that. And any boxer that you guys on the panel speak highly of, I just didn't have the time to do it this week, but definitely want to catch it. And I probably agree with you in the sense that the way that this year has been going, though, that we'll probably see the fight sooner rather than later, even though they do have those New Year's Eve cards traditionally. But it seems like we're getting a lot of like really good fights and whatnot. So hopefully we do see it earlier in the year.
You can check the bout. It's on YouTube. Just do a quick YouTube search. Both of these bouts are on YouTube. I know you said you was more focused on the Gallo Estrada bout, Daniel. So since that's the case, your thoughts on that?
Man, that body shot. That's what I'm gonna say. That body shot. It was nice. It was efficient, and it was brutal at the same time. Which pretty much can tell you all you need to know about Gallo Estrada. It was, like I said, it was a good bout for him. After, of course, we have to remember, like his first initial opponent, people dogged on him so much that they had to change it. But we kind of know where this is going. Like when it comes to Estrada, we know who he has eyes on. And considering what kind of happened to one of his rivals did to his great rival in Chocolatito in the press conference, that's going to be a nice little mini round robin to happen. And it was a great fight. Like Estrada did not do anything that made me think that he was fading or that 115 pounds is a hard adjustment for him. So
here's the thing. You got Chocolatito. You got Cuadras. You got Anuar. Estrada's right there in the mix. Estrada, I believe, is in line for a shot at Chocolatito, I believe. But the question is, does Chocolatito really want that rematch? Will he prefer a rematch with Cuadras? I guess what I'm saying is, given all these other fighters in the mix, when will Estrada get his big chance at 100?
It's better be sooner rather than later, because he did mention, like I said, like the one this I mentioned Cuadras because of what he did to Chocolatito at the press conference. And like I said, we know K2 is eventually looking at Inoue as the super fight for Chocolatito. And not to mention, like I said, that you have the Arroyo twins who can do pretty well in that division, either 112 or 115. So it's a kind of loaded. It is loaded in the sense, Michael, but at the same time, if HBO is only gonna do major bouts from now on, which is looking to be the case, then they're gonna want these fights because people know that when it comes to Chocolatito, it's a little bit like Floyd. It's a little bit like Floyd in the sense where somebody can tell Floyd, okay, you're 49-0, but in reality, you maybe actually be 47-2. Because we know that first fight with Castillo, Mayweather lost. We know that.
I thought he won, but barely.
Yeah. And I'm one of the people that thought he lost the first fight to Maidana. But what Chocolatito needs to learn from Floyd, luckily, is that Floyd came back in the rematches and did much, much better in the rematches. So when you have two people in Estrada and Cuadras who you can make a legitimate argument that beat you, yeah, you're going to have to fight him at some point. Estrada technically has earned first rights because he's the kind of the first guy that did it. Cuadras kind of earned like the immediate sense, but I would probably do Estrada first, because even if he does Cuadras, if he does the new way, and if you avoid Estrada, that's what people are going to talk about. You may be a good fighter, but you avoided a rematch with Estrada because you know he beat you.
I hear you, Daniel, and I go to you, Jacob. My problem is that Estrada may be one of these fighters that's too good for his own good. And what I mean by that is he's one of the best out there, but he's very dangerous. You're not going to make a lot of money fighting him. So what's the risk of yourself in the ring against him? Even in a rematch with Chocolatito, we know it was one of the best fights out there. We know that there are a lot of people who feel that Estrada won, but you got to remember now that fight took place in 2012, 4.5 years ago. A lot of other folks don't remember it. So people he may have been just forgotten and lost in the mix since then. He hasn't really been on an HBO or a major cable network. So he may be lost in the shuffle. He may be just too dangerous for these guys out there. There's a big push for Chocolatito, Anui. We've seen Cuadras on HBO. So again, I hear Daniel's point, Jacob, but my problem is I'm fearing that Gallo Estrada may not get his big opportunity, may not get his big shot.
Yeah, I don't think he will. Talks of, because Cuadros and Chocolatito are fighting this weekend, and the talks is that if both of them win, it's a rematch fight, which was a fantastic fight, and they can promote it off that. You're right. A lot of people don't remember, first of all, know who Estrada is, or remember that he fought the Chocolatito in a pretty evenly matched fight. So he doesn't have that name notoriety. I would love to see the fight again, of course, but I think the plans of, I'm not so sure that Chocolatito wants that fight.
I don't either, because
I
he's asked about it. He's been asked about it, and he was like, nah. He didn't really outright say no, but he wants the demands here. Talk of him wanting at least $1 million for a possible rematch. I don't know if anybody is willing to pay him that much. So he doesn't seem too enthusiastic about getting in the ring with Gallo Estrada again.
Yeah, I don't think so. It's starting to look that way, and even though Cuadros is a dangerous fight, but and then they have Anui, standing on the sidelines. I think if I was Estrada's team, my angle would be, since they're trying to set up that Cuadros rematch potentially, is to maybe go after Anui and see if I can get a fight, even overseas, and do some traveling, go on the road. And if I get that win, it almost forces Chocolatito's hand, because they were trying to push the narrative of the Anui fight with Chocolatito, him being at the fight, and HBO talking a lot about it. But it would kind of, in my opinion, make it a harder fight to run away from if he were to be able to get that win. But again, that's another tough fight.
Move on and talk about some news events. I was going to talk about the Super Series and this tournament, but Bernard in the chat was asking me this question about Vanes Martirosyan. For those who don't know, Vanes has signed who's having contract issues, not happy with his former promoter, signed a deal with Don King. Personally, I don't like it because Vane's main complaint was lack of inactivity. I don't know signing with Don King will do anything to alleviate that. King is a legend. Don King is a legend. But in 2017, he doesn't have quite the clout. He doesn't have the pull that he had in the 80s, in the 90s, in the early 2000s. It's about Al Heyman now. It's still about Arum. It's about PBC. It's about Golden Boy. King is not in that mix right now. He doesn't have the stable of fighters. He doesn't have the real backing of the networks like he used to. So again, and I'll go to you on this one, Daniel. I don't know if this is a help. I don't know how the signing for Vanes to King, I don't know how it helps him.
It doesn't. It's technically career suicide because unfortunately Don King Productions is in a financial state where everybody believes that their next show is the last show. That's their financial picture. They in their mindset. They literally right now probably think that the Vermain Stavern fight versus Deontay Wilder that's going to be their last show because they're in such dire financial shape because of the things that Don King has done. He has a reputation, unfortunately, for being a very, very blatant grifter. Like I said, it still has him banned for life from New Jersey for ever doing business there. The issue, though, it's going to be for Matarojan is you're in a division that is controlled by your former promoter, Al Heyman. It's blatantly controlled, either from contenders to title holders. The only belt that's not available to them is a WBO belt. And that's going to go, and that may change things if this Heyman partnership with Eddie Hearn that he's had for a while goes further. So, this is technically career suicide. I understand. I completely understand why Vanes did it the way he did it. Because Al Heyman wasn't giving him, really wasn't giving him any fights. And a lot of the fights that he did get, they were really close matchups, or they were bad style matchups, and they turned into close fights. Which sometimes, like I said, even though close fights tend to look really good on paper, a lot of times they're not really good at all. A lot of times. And Vanes has been on the ladder for many of those. So that issue that has to come with signing with Don King has to be coming to effect of I have to get a title shot now. I have to position myself for the WBO now. Even though you're technically not, because the WBO has designs on putting that belt on Miguel Cotto. Once Canelo vacates. That's the key word. Once Canelo vacates. So I don't see a benefit from this if you sign with a promoter that may not actually be around by year's end. And they say, I know we made the running joke last year when it comes to Al Heyman and the PBC finances. With Don King, it's literal. We may not see Don King promote productions after 2017. And it's like, let's speak of which, like the only fighters of note in Don King promotions, other than Vanes Matarojan, are Mir and Mom, who I have not seen much of at all since he got demolished by Adrian Granados. And
he had the knockout, right? Didn't he have that knockout towards the end of the year? Or
yeah, I think once. Yeah, one knockout. And then Stavern, who probably is only getting the mandatory slot now versus Wilder as a personal favor of Mauricio Suleiman for the relationship that Jose Suleiman had with Don King. So there's not much out there. There's not much out there when it comes to productions, but I guess with Vanes, if you look at it also, he burned bridges with Top Rank. And he probably did it in a way where Golden Boy is going to stay away from him. And unless he's moving up to 160, K2 really has no use for him. So I understand the move. I don't like it. I think it's still career suicide. At the end of the day, though, I could probably see Vaness with another new promoter either by the end of this year or early next year.
Thumbs up or thumbs down to this move, Jacob?
Thumbs down. But I mean, to me, Vaness is not. I'm not very high on him. I don't think he's very significant in the division, so I really don't care what promotion company he goes to. I don't think he's ever going to be tops in the division. He'll be more of a stepping stone or just kind of a gatekeeper. So, you know, I could care less.
Other main news is what's the name? Richard Schaefer and Kalle Saurland and the Saurland Productions, in association basically with the World Boxing Super Series, is launching a $50 million kind of a super boxing tournament. There was an announcement earlier this week. I'll go to you, Daniel. Give the details on this tournament. Pushed by World Boxing Super Series as well as Schaefer and Saurland.
This is a mini way of trying to like recreating Boxino under Super 6. Like I said, the way Schaefer and Saurland announced it, they want to do it. They want to do it an annual tournament, 2 divisions each year. And I think the first division they picked was heavyweight, which is at this stage of the game kind of redundant because they're banking on trying to get champions to participate in the tournament. And we know how hard it is for champions to agree to tournaments. Remember, we only had 2 recent ones that are major ones, the Super 6 and I think the Bantamweight tournament. And they were both on Showtime. So there's a good chance, like I said, Showtime's probably going to get this tournament too. And yeah, they're having $50 million. I think the prize is same thing, a trophy. They're calling it the greatest prize in boxing, the Muhammad Ali trophy. But the success of this is, like I said, it depends on if you get the champions and the other promoters to agree with you. Now, I think a couple months ago, like I said, there were actually talks between the WBA and the WBC of kind of doing the same thing, of actually uniting all 4 sanctioning bodies as far as getting mandatory challengers for their fighters, like a universal mandatory challenger. That's hard to do in itself just based on the politics of sanctioning bodies. Now you're adding, like I say, you're adding a tournament to the mix in a division that I don't think really needs it in heavyweight. I don't think it needs it at this stage of the game. We kind of know that the super fight you people want to see after April's is going to be Joshua versus Wilder. So it's a halfway decent plan. Like they're going to try to base it on international fronts. They're going to have it in various locations throughout the year instead of going down and actually to going to one place. But it feels a little bit incomplete just based on what division they picked to do it the first year.
Right. Makes no sense to do it with heavyweights, not only because the division is so flux, but particularly with a possible Wilder Joshua bout. Why would they need that tournament when they can do that fight on their own and they could far exceed the $50 million that's being proposed by this tournament? That makes no sense to me. Also, as you were saying, the sanctioning bodies, that's going to be an issue with every division because of red tape and politics. While it sounds good, I don't see how they can get this all together with the sanctioning bodies unless they under the table throw some money their way to clear through all the red tape so to make this fight happen. Your thoughts, Jacob?
I mean, I like the idea of this, kind of semi Super Six, because I was a big fan of that Super Six idea and this tournament. I don't like that they're starting with the heavyweights, if that's what I'm hearing. I just don't think it's smart, but they're not. That part's disappointing, but we'll have to see how it plays out. I mean, when the idea of the Super Six first came out, I was a little skeptical about who they were going to get to participate and how that would all go, but it ended up being a pretty good thing. And Schaefer and team, they're a smart group of guys, and they must have their reasons for doing this, and potentially maybe they just have some assumptions and they think it's going to work out in the end. But we'll see. I mean, I'm excited about anything like kind of different or new to like reinvigorate boxing, especially a division like heavyweight, which was been dormant for so long, but of recent has a lot of kind of like new blood, so to speak. So I'm gonna trust them and let it play out, and see how it goes, and then we'll probably comment on it later when we start seeing the results.
You mentioned how Showtime has expressed interest in this. Given the financial issues with HBO and their budget, do you think they will entertain this tournament as well?
Showtime?
HBO. Any of you guys, Daniel,
no.
Jacob, either you can respond.
No, I don't think HBO is going to play ball.
Not if Al Heyman's involved. And when it comes to Richard Schaefer, Al Heyman's involved. So they're not going to touch it.
Yeah. Plus, I don't think they have the budget to even touch it. I mean, Showtime's kicking HBO's ass right now. It's not even a contest. Well, it's like they're Usain Bolt and HBO's like a fucking 4-year-old kid. And it's very disappointing because I've been a big supporter of HBO, but I don't like the moves and stuff that they're doing right now. And they'll put money into a Canelo Chavez fight, which to me is a joke fight, but then they're not putting any money zero into certain fights, like a couple cards coming up where it's going to have prospects on there to try to build for a future. Kind of like similar how their boxing after dark card kind of was, and how definitely how the Showbox was it the Next Generation or their Showbox series, it's like almost like a farm league, and you catch those things kind of like later at night, come home from maybe being out, sometimes it was on a Friday, sometimes on a Saturday, but come home, you get to watch the fights, beer in your hand, whatever, and enjoy it, and you get to see some talent. And the fact that they're not doing that and they're just looking for money grabs, I think it's gonna backfire on them. One of my predictions from last year was that pay-per-view is dead for boxing. I really believe that it's gonna go away and people aren't gonna put their money on pay-per-view anymore. I mean, you have things like the Fire Stick or streaming services that are people sharing stuff on Periscope or whatever, that's kind of eliminating that that even need to see that stuff. You can pretty much find a stream or find some way to see it where you don't have to pay for it. And I don't believe that everybody's I guess have certain morals and whatnot. So I just really don't think that their model is going to work. I think they're banking on supposedly these big fights to bring in big pay-per-view numbers, and I think it's going to backfire big, and Showtime's going to pick up the pieces. Okay,
Daniel, you in your breakdown of this, you mentioned how 2 annual tournaments will run simultaneously with the finals of the first tournament set place, I want to say in May 2018, and I think the winner will receive a Muhammad Ali trophy. As far as who will compete, I believe the first 2 weight classes will be finalized in the next 6 to 8 weeks, according to Schaefer. Assuming this is a go and this kicks off and everything is all good, outside of heavyweight division, which I believe is too problematic to take place, which 2 divisions would you like World Boxing Super Series to begin with?
Featherweight. Easily featherweight. Because right now they're being a little bit too cheeky about not facing each other. And yes, I'm talking to you, Lee Selby. I'm talking to you, Gary Russell Jr. Yeah, they're a little bit too cheeky and not facing one another. So featherweight's a good way to start when it comes to that tournament. The problem, though, is we kind of had some go at this last year. Remember with the super middleweight, where we had that double header, the Gale Porky Medina, then Butte Jack. And look how long it took for them to finally make the fight they were supposed to make in September. That's the problem I kind of have with this tournament. Money, I'm not worried about when it comes to much of it, because apparently they're not really banking on and look, and this might actually, like I said, if Heyman wasn't involved, I would say this might actually pique HBO's interest. They're bankrolling the money themselves. Because obviously, like I said, Richard Schaefer's, his life before was a banker. So he knows how to generate revenue really, really fast. So this $50 million tournament is going to be backed by this World Boxing Super Series. So Showtime and HBO don't really have to spend money on it. They just have to produce it. But the problem is going to be, though, is you have to pick the right division. Like I said, we already seen the problems at heavyweight, where that tournament's not going to help, in the sense that a lot of the fights are going to be made by themselves without it. Like we know we're probably going to get Parker Wilder or Parker Joshua at some point this year. And featherweight actually probably be a good way to start. Featherweight, 115 pounds would have been nice. But I could also, you know what, because they have them loaded already, why not junior middleweight too? Why not? You have an abundant group of not only great champions, you have a really good group of prospects. And this can easily settle some questions that we have. Like, Mike, I know you're still on that fence when it comes to Erickson Lubin facing Jarrett Hurd. What if the tournament turns out to be, in one of the rounds, Jarrett Hurd versus Erickson Lubin? We get at that question answered immediately. So I would definitely want to see that junior middleweight or featherweight, because given the parties that are involved, it's probably the easier fights to make, because then you have to deal with less of the promotional issues that otherwise would plague other divisions. Because like right now, like you can I'll give you, like I said, we mentioned the problems of heavyweight. This tournament would never succeed at light heavyweight. It just can't. Just based on the politics that it's based off now. So, but the politics of it is really great at featherweight. So do it.
I'll get my 2 choices before I go to Jacob. For me, it probably won't happen because of the politics. Like you said, politics aside, though. For me, it's 115 and 154. Just imagine a tournament with Roman, with Cuadras, with Gallo Estrada, with the Nui, with the Yafai, all fighting each other. That would be lovely. Also, 154, as you were stating, Daniel, So much young, up and coming talent. Jamel, Lara, who's up there in age. You got Andrade. You got Lubin. You got Hurd. You got Hatley. And it's probably a couple other fighters I'm missing right now, forgetting about. But yeah, those two fighters specifically. 154 would be easy to make, but 115, for folks who don't pay attention to the smaller weight divisions, to the lighter weight divisions, that division is loaded. It really is loaded with really, really good fighters. And the other fighter I forgot to mention, Rungvisai, who's fighting Chocolatito this weekend. I just think we will talk about the bout a little bit later, but I think that has a really good chance to steal the show. I'll go to you lastly, Jacob, before we start breaking down what's happening this weekend. Aside from heavyweight, if you had a division, 2 divisions, which you want this World Super Series to start with, which divisions would you like to see unified?
I'm gonna go more the Daniel route and just not say who I would like to see, but more of what is the realistic, based on the stables and the organization ties. But one of the first that came to mind was the one that you both said was super or junior, I guess super welterweight, junior middleweight, 154. I think there's a lot of makeable fights there. You would have enough people to put 8 to 10 fighters in there, and I think there would be some decent matchups, and some clarity within that division. The other one I thought of was welterweight, but I like Daniel's featherweight idea too. Now, I mean, I love you have a great point that 115's loaded, but I mean, I just don't see with the way that this is played out and how HBO's involvement is probably going to be next to nothing. I just don't see those fights, unfortunately, happening. As much as I would love to see them, I just don't see it.
Let's say welterweight. Do you think Aaron would bring Manny to the dance?
Maybe. I mean, he might get desperate. Manny's at the end of his career. He might want to cash in. And
that's what I mean, because he want to cash in. I believe Aaron still owes Manny some money or something to that effect. So
Manny, you can get Manny, you can get like a Bradley. You can. I mean, there's you can. He's got some options there, and he might get desperate. I mean, he's going to be putting on another pay-per-view without the help of HBO again. So I mean.
That's what I'm saying.
He had the Bud Crawford one that was a loser, supposedly. He had the Manny Pacquiao Bradley one that was supposedly a loser. So, when people are desperate and it makes business sense, money to these guys. So, I wouldn't put it past them.
The problem with just doing Manny or doing Bradley or like any other the welterweights the Top Rank has, which aren't many. Like Jesse Vargas probably, and that's it. Is when it comes to the welterweights, you have that's amazingly because Manny's still there, still considered one of the money divisions. It's one of the and if you do a tournament that's $50 million and it's a tournament that has to create really, really good matchups in 2 weight divisions at the same time in multiple venues in multiple countries where both the tax situation, the permit situation are very different, and so is the money situation in each country. Welterweight, for some reason, even welterweight's one of those divisions, unfortunately, you cannot do it unless like you fully dedicated just to the US or dedicated just fully to the UK. Because
wait. Explain that.
Because then you kind of have the money situation is settled. You're based on US dollars. You're based on US tax code. Same thing with the UK. You're based on the British pound. You're based on British tax code. So that's one easy way to settle the money aspect. The problem also is going to be, like I said, particularly with Pacquiao. He's already, like I said, the contract pretty much already with Top Rank already dictates that he, like Gus mentioned, that he has to pay him at least $20 million unless he signs a waiver. That's half of that tournament's budget right there, just for one guy, and that's just in one fight. So it would have to do it welterweight to get Manny involved. You would technically have to do it in the way where the winner of this tournament faces Manny Pacquiao because of the money that Manny and his team are gonna demand from it.
What about if he could potentially get multiple fights though, and so he was trying to get that Amir Khan fight, or more like Amir Khan was trying to get the Manny fight, but he has ties to Heyman, and that could potentially happen.
Yeah, but look at the purse that they was trying to get into it. That's the problem. This tournament's supposed to be $50 million for the entire thing.
Right.
You're technically trying to get a fighter that realistically will ask for at least half of that in total purse by himself in one fight. Unless you can convince Pacquiao to really lowball, just take like $1 or $2 million per this fight to participate in this tournament. That's the only way you're gonna get it through the Manny or Manny's people. And unfortunately, Manny Pacquiao is he's the MC Hammer of the boxing world. So he can't afford it because he has so many people that depend on him as either a direct employer or as a beneficiary of his philanthropy. There's no way he can do it. Like I said, and that ultimately hurts. Like I said, the only way you can actually do it is if he gets put on the top immediately, and then these people just do the tournament, go an aspect to it, which also, just out of ego's sake, will probably bring Floyd into it. And then Floyd will demand to be put on the top of it. Well, he's kind of doing that now already. So
Nah, he's not going to come back to me, Floyd isn't going to come back for some type of tied into some type of tournament.
Nah.
He knows that he can make a bunch of money off one fight and break the record and go back to promotions.
Yeah, I agree.
I kind of wish he would just stay at promotions at this point, but yeah, he had to open his mouth.
You mean Conor had to open his mouth? Let's move on.
No shit.
Yeah,
actually,
Conor.
no. Actually, well, Mike, this is this is probably this is what makes the hair stand on the back of my neck. Because remember, he's trying to mention this McGregor crap for June. And interestingly enough, when the Khan fight fell through, Bob Arum says, I already have another opponent in mind for Manny. I'll send him next week. And hopefully I'll have him fighting again in June.
Man, you're holding on to this May Pack 2 very hard, Daniel. I just don't think it's going to happen.
I hope not. But then they keep doing this crap. I'm like, I really hope not. I really hope it is just Jeff Horn, and then I could be happy with that, with Manny fighting somebody young and not a retread. But like I said, I don't see any way possible that, despite what he said last night on late night talk, that Dana White will ultimately let Conor McGregor fight in a boxing match with Floyd. He'll demand it be an MMA fight.
Nah, he'll do it if he gets paid high enough, well enough.
Yeah, good if he gets paid high enough. And remember, Dana White doesn't own the UFC. He's just the president of the UFC. The UFC sold their right to a year or 80 something. It's not the Renzo. What is it?
Yeah, it's not those guys anymore. It's another group.
Ferretti's or whatever, for Patellis.
Yeah, it's another group. But
So I mean, if they want to, if they know they have a chance to make a bunch of money, and as much as they invested, they're going to tell Dana White what to do.
The problem though is that the UFC model is kind of built like the WWE model, and the WWE model it exists in its own universe, and the UFC has done a pretty effective job of getting casual MMA fans to only believe that they're the only thing in town when it comes to MMA, despite various evidences of being to the contrary. So why would they risk that when they know they'll just be second fiddle to one guy in Floyd Mayweather?
I mean, for me, it's a money thing. I mean,
It is a money thing.
I don't care what anybody says.
They will put Conor out there for him to cash out. No doubt about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a business. I mean, I think anybody that thinks that they wouldn't sacrifice, any of their fighters for a payday is delusional. I mean, they at the end of the day, they don't really give a shit about the fighters. They just want to make money. They're operating a business.
Right.
Well, I agree in that sense. My point is that they'll try to do it on their terms. Okay, I'm going to send you to the slaughter, but we're going to be the main show.
I could see them doing something like trying to sign a 2-fight thing where one is a boxing match and one is an MMA match.
Floyd is not doing MMA.
I mean, I don't think he will. I'm just saying I could see that being the offer, and I could see them trying to in front of Floyd and putting it out to the public. Well, we'll have the boxing match, which is your forte, and for this much money, but the rematch is going to be in the MMA, and what are you, chicken? And just kind of try to play that whole narrative. And I don't think Floyd's going to bite, because I don't really think Floyd cares what people say about him. At the end of the day, he's like, hey, I'm rich and I'm undefeated, and so who cares what you say?
And that's the whole point. And that's the whole point. Like, if this proposes to him, he'll just laugh it off and just say that I'm a rival. Because at the end of the day, remember, whether it was Ronda Rousey or now Conor McGregor, it's the UFC that's barking up Floyd's treat.
But look, man, the reason I say that, let's just cut to the chase. You mentioned Ronda Rousey. He put her in the ring even though it was obvious she wasn't ready to come back in the ring. And you can see it the moment she got in her last fight, mentally she was shot. Psychologically, she was shot. If he's willing to do that to her, what makes you think he's not going to throw McGregor in there for a career high payday, not just for McGregor, but for a cash out for his outfit, for his brand? So
for sure.
Miss me all this stuff with demands and under his rules. He will let Floyd run basically the show. As long as he get his in the end, that's the point.
Yeah, and because McGregor, when he fought Nate Diaz, he didn't go to I think it was the rematch, he didn't go to the press conference, and he got reprimanded for that. He at his conference when he beat, I think it was Alvarez, he was talking about, I want to be a owner, and I'm the one making the money, and making all these demands. So I mean, there's some adversarial relationship there. The only reason that I think the UFC and Dana White entertain it is because he does make them money, and he does talk a lot, and he does get people riled up. So they're going to ride that all the way home. But you got another thing coming if you think that they actually care about him. I mean, if they can make money, I agree with you, Mike. I think they'll throw him to the wolves, no problem.
Nobody mentioned the UFC actually giving a damn about Conor McGregor, but the point is, I think that one of the points probably trying to make is first as a business model. I said the UFC's built a pretty strong business model within MMA to having people think that it's the only game in town. When, like I said, when it's clearly not the case throughout the world. But at the same time, when you're facing something in the US, you're the biggest supposedly brand out there. You're supposedly taking over boxing, and yet at the end of the day, You as an entire through Conor McGregor as an entire sport is pining over one guy because he's the only one they're going after. I don't see them going after Canelo. I don't see them going after Golovkin. I don't even see them trying to go after Manny. Only Floyd.
Because Floyd brings money though. He's the pay-per-view money.
That's my point.
None of them have done what Floyd's done.
That's my point. And it's just a little hit to like the MMA heads who always keep trying to say boxing's dead, MMA is king. Yeah, your entire sport is trying to lure one guy in for a payday. One of our guys, actually. An entire sport is doing that. Meanwhile, boxing just keeps moving.
I mean, for me, anybody that's ever said boxing was dead is just, it's a stupid comment. Boxing and every sport goes through its peaks and valleys. And UFC is going to have the same effect. I mean, they were a fast-growing sport, and I've been watching it for a long time. But I'm still partial to boxing. I still think boxing is a better overall sport, and that's just my opinion. But, they're starting to feel the effects of being mainstream now, where fighters are getting hurt or things are getting canceled or the favorite fighter isn't winning or their show's not doing as well because they have too much product out there. Those effects that all other major sports have. The only real thing that they don't get is, yes, there's other games in town, but they are the NFL compared to those other organizations when it comes to MMA. I mean, they've been kind of gobbling up a lot of the different organizations like Pride, Strikeforce, WEC, and whatnot. So, I mean, to me, I think they're gonna slowly start to see a decline in their viewership and whatnot because they have struggled of late to put up solid cards because people keep on pulling out or get hurt or get popped for performance enhancing, and so now they're starting to see those effects from being a mainstream sport.
Let's move on and start shutting down. Start a close to the show by previewing what's happening this weekend. Main bout is in NYC in Madison Square Garden. Triple G Gennady Golovkin fighting Daniel Jacobs. WBA, WBC, IBF middleweight titles are on the line. Golovkin is the obvious favorite, but I think, put it this way, I believe Golovkin will win, but I believe Jacobs has a chance to give him a fight, to give him a tussle, because he's a quick fighter. He's fast. He has good hand speed. He has skill, and he can punch. Something that Golovkin really hasn't seen yet as a professional to this degree. The arsenal that Jacobs will bring to him. The question, of course, about Jacobs is punch resistance. He's been knocked out. He's been hurt by a guy who doesn't have real power. And Sergio Moore was knocked out by P-Rock years ago. But in spite of that, like I said before, he has the skill set. He has the physical tools to give Golovkin some problems here. I just think that Golovkin will be too much in the end, too physically strong. And I just don't know how Jacobs will react to the body attack once Golovkin starts to focus there. I'll go to you, Daniel. You can follow up, Jacob. Your breakdown of this fight between Triple G and Daniel Jacobs is happening in a couple of days from now in NYC.
It's let's face it. When this fight was made, people were happy about it because it's the best fighter each guy has faced. Like I said, you mentioned that when it comes to the speed and the footwork of Jacobs, when it comes to Golovkin, but Golovkin has good fundamentals and obviously can punch. I kind of see it the same way. I do see Jacobs giving him some issues at first when it comes to timing hand speed, but Golovkin has shown that he's willing to exchange and be willing to get hit in that exchange at the same time. And a lot of those exchanges, he's come out on top. Like I think the punch that really I think scared the living daylights out of everybody as far as the division was how he took out Daniel Gil. When Gil landed his hook perfectly on Golovkin's chin. And then right afterward, Triple G lands that punch and Gil's out cold. I could see it happen the same. I could see Jacobs with the footwork giving him a little bit of issues, looking similar in ways to the Kell Brook fight, as far as like him facing an athletic guy. But we saw what happened in the Brook fight. Triple G, one of the things that he does is he's patient. Like I said, he's smart in the ring. Like remember, like we talked about David Lemieux. Like he was smart enough to know what to take away from a guy's best defense. He knew he had to jab Lemieux because Lemieux could do what we saw on Saturday night. Sorry. And with Jacobs, I think he's going to find a way to try to jab to offset the timing that Jacobs is going to have in trying to set his combinations, in trying to set his footwork. Maybe like jab as he sees Jacobs come in to disrupt that rhythm. And then ultimately, I think he'll wear him down. It'll probably try to be like a mid to late round stoppage, but it'll be a good fight. It's not, like I said, I'm coming around a little bit. I thought when this fight's going to be, it was going to be a bloodbath, but I think Jacobs will last a little bit. I just don't think he'll win.
Jacobs very impressive in his knockout of Peter Quillen 2 fights back, I believe. Took him out, I think, in a round or 2 rounds. I can't remember exactly.
First round.
First round. You're right. First round. So he brings a lot to the table. That being said, Jacob, how tough of a fight do you think Jacobs can give Triple G? Do you think he has a chance to win? I know Gus on the show has stated that he believes that Jacobs can beat Triple G. Your thoughts?
100% Jacobs could beat Triple G. Daniel hit on a lot of good points. I mean, his number one point was this is the best fighter that either one of them have faced. And it's a good fight. It is. I mean, probably if I had to give it a percentage, I'd probably lean maybe like 55-45 for Golovkin. And the reason is that Golovkin, for everything that he's accomplished in a weak middleweight division, I think that, first of all, I think his power might be a little bit overrated. I don't think that he has, when we talk about like knockout power, he's not putting these guys out like asleep. That rarely happens. He basically, he wears on them, he looks for his spots, and then, he lands. But these guys don't go out. The fights get stopped or, the fighters wave it off, so to speak. But, I think what Golovkin's strategy is in his fights is that he kind of sees how heavy the hands are of the other fighter. And to be honest, he hasn't really faced anybody except Lemieux that has had really heavy hands. Stevens, yes, but, I think his power might be a little bit overstated too. But, once he knows that he could take their power, then he does that kind of like, taking the free shots to give a shot thing, which I think is dangerous. But
he can't do that with this guy.
Well, no, and I agree. I think it's dangerous, but he does it. But he didn't do that with Lemieux because Lemieux has power, right? So what he did was he did a completely different thing. He didn't go Mexican style. He didn't, go, straight at him. He did come at him, but it was with a jab, behind a jab, right? And he actually, I think he knocked Lemieux down and almost got disqualified, actually. I think it was like the 4th or 5th round, maybe the 6th round. Can't remember. But where he hit him, I think it was a body shot or something, and Lemieux took a knee. So that fight, it was completely different, though, because it was a power puncher like Jacobs is. He had a totally different approach, and I think he's going to be smart and have that same type of approach in this fight. There's a lot riding on the line here. If he's looking too far ahead at a Canelo fight which I personally don't think is going to happen. But or maybe unifying the division or a super middleweight, he'd be doing a disservice to Jacobs, because Jacobs is a live dog now. But with Jacobs, the questions for me with him is, because he has been stopped before and hurt, is that going to get to him? Because even against Mora, he knocked Mora down, and Mora came and caught him with a nice punch and put him down and had him hurt. So we know Jacobs can be hurt. We haven't really seen Golovkin be hurt. We've seen him be bothered more than anything, but not, I wouldn't say where I could physically see that, he's hurt, he's in trouble. So Golovkin knows that, his team knows that. I think they're going to use the strategy of getting behind the jab, pick their spots. Jacob seems to be a little bit not a fast starter, kind of tentative at times. He doesn't fight well, I don't think, off the back foot. And the Quillen win, as spectacular as it was, you know what? I don't put a lot of stock in that, because it could be that Quillen just got caught cold. I mean, it was the first round. He got caught, and we didn't really get to see, Quillen and Jacobs, that fight play out. So I think Jacobs will put a good showing on. I think he's going to look to, try to establish his power and hopefully, upset Golovkin or see, maybe a chink in the armor. But I think Golovkin eventually takes over the fight late, and I'm not going to say he stops him. I think it goes to the decision.
Main undercard, Roman Gonzalez fighting a Thai fighter by the name of Rungvisai.
Real fast, Mike. I didn't. Did you do your pick? Or
no, I said earlier. I thought that Jacobs will give him a good fight, but I just think in the end, Triple G will be too much for him. I wonder how Jacobs will react to Golovkin focusing on his body. I still have issues about his chin. I could see a scenario where Jacobs hurts Golovkin in the first 3-4 rounds, but I just see that Golovkin able to take the shot, and then eventually wearing down Jacobs, late stoppage or a rather comfortable win by decision. I just think there are moments where Jacobs will give Triple G some trouble, but at the end, I'm going with Triple G to win. I just think he'll be too much firepower for the likes of Jacobs, who will have his moments, but I just think he will lose. As I was saying, Roman Gonzalez fighting a Thai fighter by the name of Rungvisai, a former champion. I tweeted this yesterday. I think this fight between Gonzalez and Rungvisai not being talked about enough. Look, Rungvisai, the style matchups, they really mesh well. I think however long this bout lasts, I think it's going to be entertaining. Both fighters like to come forward. Roman Gonzalez, of course, seems to be an unlimited offensive arsenal, but Rungvisai, he comes forward as well. Has a lot of power, particularly in his left hand. Even though he lost the belt to Cuadras, it wasn't a definitive loss. He lost via cut, and Cuadras won by technical decision. So for me, the Thai fighter Rungvisai, he has the confidence still of a champion. I think he's going to bring that into the ring, and as I said, styles makes fights here, and I think this has a chance to possibly really steal the show. I think Roman Gonzalez, I'm picking him to win eventually, possibly by stoppage, but I think there are moments where Rungvisai is really going to take the fight to him. Jacob, Daniel, your thoughts?
I don't know too much about Rungvisai, but I really like Chocolatito. I think he has a lot of talent, and I think the Cuadros fight, it was a tough fight. Cuadros is no pushover. Cuadros is a good fighter, and I'm glad that he got a chance to showcase that. And I know he's fighting on another card, but I really think that Gonzalez learns a lot from his fights and grows from them. So I have him winning the fight. Potentially it could go to decision, but maybe he can get a late stoppage. It really, to me, it really depends on how good of a chin. I can't even say his name. What was it? Vasquez?
His opponent, Chocolatito, is Rungvisai.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's hard to pronounce. So
yeah. So I mean, I could see a late stoppage, but again, not knowing too much about him, we'll see. How he handles the bright lights and whatnot. I mean, there's a lot of good Thai fighters that can fight. So I mean, maybe he'll surprise, but ultimately I gotta pick Chocolatito.
your thoughts, Daniel?
Before I go in, one interesting thing people have to know about Thai culture, and one of the reasons why actually it confused a lot of people when a fighter of a similar name actually popped for the WBC VADA testing, is that in Thai culture there are actually no last names. That's why you see a lot of, when it comes to a lot of Thai fighters.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
educational as well as informative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of Thai fighters, the names that you see them fight under are often not their real names.
Yeah, in fact, like that's why you notice like the word gym, like at the end of a lot of the last names, they put
That's
the last
named
name
after a gym or a sponsorship.
Yeah, gym. Yeah, the gym that they train at normally. So with Rungvisai, it's the same thing. But to me, this is an actual real test of is what happened in Cuadras fight where Chocolatito reached plateau at 115 pounds, whether that's true or just Cuadras is a really tough opponent for him. Because Cuadras was just taller and had better range than Chocolatito. Rungvisai has similar aspects to it, and he has enough power that Cuadras kind of avoided him at all costs rather than face him again. So it's going to be a real decent test for Chocolatito. Like I said, it gets his mandatory situation out of the way. So now, down the line, now he can focus on the Estrada, or he can focus on Cuadras, who, by the way, the situation that I mentioned, and today was the post-fight press conference. Sorry, not the pre-fight press conference, the final one. Cuadras gave Chocolatito a Barbie doll as a gift.
Damn.
And so, yeah, that's going to have some real animosity there. But I think when it comes to it, I do agree with Jacob. He learns from his fights. But I'm going to see also, you also have to see how well he adjusts, because remember, this is the first fight he's going to have his longtime trainer who died.
Yeah.
So we don't know how focused is going to be that aspect of it. He's dedicating the fight to him. So we have to see.
Might be similarities to like a Leo Santa Cruz when his father wasn't in his corner when he fought Frampton that first time too.
Or given what happened at the press conference today, the passing of his trainer, coupled with what Cuadras did to him, it may raise up his level. He may be even more pumped up, more motivation to really put on the display here and really seek and destroy.
Yeah, and as with it, like I said, if we want to look at a similar case where something like that happened and it actually may have turned out a little bit for the better, it's Keith Thurman. Because remember, his original trainer was Gennady, and he was doing really, really well. And unfortunately, like I said, Gennady died. But luckily, with Thurman, he had a really good trainer that he could rely on, who trained champions before and wound up being probably a better fighter for it. This might be a similar case with Chocolatito, because like I said, I agree with Jacob in the sense that he learns from his fights. And he kind of knows that at this stage of the game, he needs to impress. To like, first of all, lure the big money to him. And B, to wash off like this sentiment that people have of him right now, where he kind of got lucky with his last fight. He kind of got lucky. So he has to wash off the sentiment and it could be a nice little one-upmanship when it comes to Cuadras saying, I beat the guy you try to avoid at all costs. So I could see Chocolatito winning. I think it'll probably be similar to, not the Cuadras fight, to the Arroyo fight, where it runs
just a systematic beatdown.
Yeah, systematic beatdown, but with a really tough opponent that he's not going to be able to knock out.
Speaking of Cuadras, he's fighting David Carmona on the undercard. Given the stunt that he pulled today, do you think that Cuadras could be guilty of just overlooking his opponent on Saturday, or is it just a case of he's just so superior that it's not going to matter?
It's a bit of both. We kind of know when it comes to that rage that Cuadras is number two right now behind Chocolatito. And then Inoue right behind him. The problem, though, is it's true. Like, if you focus too much on one guy, you can ruin your chances. And as the saying goes, the best laid plans usually the ones that feel worse at the end.
Your thoughts, Jacob?
Yeah, I definitely think he's overlooking his opponent in the sense that he's so laser focused on Chocolatito and what that win would have brought to him. But I do think Cuadras is a very good fighter. I think he has a variety of skills. And even not being 100% focused, I think he could still readjust. You know, maybe he gets, a little kind of a wake-up call, third, fourth round and be like, hey, shit, what am I doing? The guy that I'm fighting is right here in front of me, not Chocolatito. Let me take care of business. If Chocolatito takes care of business, I'm going to get that rematch, but let me focus on this guy. So I think it could be a little bit of that. I think he has a little bit of arrogance too. So, he's a very proud and, believes in himself kind of guy. So, he kind of has that bravado about him. But I still would expect that Cuadras would win, probably by decision. But we'll see.
I think Cuadras will win too, probably by decision. He probably is looking Carmona, overlooking Carmona a bit. And you're right, Jacob. He's hell bent on getting a rematch with Roman Gonzalez. That's why he's pulled the stunt that he did. Pulled that stunt earlier today at the final pre-fight press conference. But at the end, because of that, I think he's going to be. Let me refrain and let me check that. I think because he wants that bout so bad, he's not going to let anything get in his way of a possible rematch. Because of that, I believe he's going to win this bout and win it rather comfortably, in spite of stunt that he pulled earlier today at the final pre-fight press conference. And I think we're going to end the show on that note. Want to thank Bernard from Truth and Facts in Boxing, as well as the Movement Podcast, for checking out the live show, as well as I believe Miss Fight Lady is listening to us live, as well as Joe and Francis from 4 Boxing News. I'll go around the hangout here, around the panel. Jacob from Jab Hook Boxing, for folks who want to talk to sweet science or movies or anything else, let the folks know where they can find you.
Yeah, again, thanks for having me on the show again, Mike, and yeah, to everybody out there, I know we got the followers and whatnot, and I try to treat out the show and trying to get some interest, but yeah, follow the show, support the show. It's a good show, good people. And a shout out to Gail, our usually dependable in panel. She's in New York. She's going to be covering the fight, so follow her on Twitter, and she'll be giving you all the rundown there and all the action going on. But that could be found at jabhookboxing.com or at JRATM23.
Yeah, shout out to Gail. She's out in NYC, probably freezing her butt off. She's used to that warm Southern California weather. So all I have to say, Gail, is I hope you packed to dress warm. Daniel from the Inscriber, for folks who want to talk boxing or the NBA, specifically the Miami Heat, who's playing some hellified basketball over the second half of the season. Let the folks know where they can find you. Are you there, Daniel? Okay.
Yes, folks. You can find me on Twitter, Ruckus99. I'm doing writing the story in the Inscriber right now. I'm making my case for Eric Spoelstra for being Coach of the Year, which, like as Michael mentioned, there's a strong case for it right now. But definitely catch me next on Twitter, Ruckus99. And on Sundays and Mondays, like I said, me and the folks at For Boxing News, Joe and Francis. Like I said, we also have our own show. We talk about things in boxing. Obviously, we're going to talk about all the events of this weekend coming up, which includes, like I said, let's mention the debut of Michael Conlan.
Yes, so, I forgot to mention that. I'm sorry. My apologies.
Yep. Tomorrow night at the theater in Madison Square Garden, which, interesting enough, is probably going to be hyped up because Conor McGregor is going to be the one holding the Irish flag to walk into the ring. And then, like I said, we'll definitely be able to catch that, and we're definitely going to preview the upcoming bouts because we got a nice little lightweight matchup coming up in about a week.
Indeed.
Hey, I think Andy Lee's also returning on that Golovkin card, just as a FYI to everybody.
Yep. Yes, he is.
Oh yeah, he is. Fighting an eighth round bout. I should note that. He's fighting an 8-round bout, returning to the ring following his loss to Billy Joe Saunders, I believe, over a year ago now. For folks who want to talk the sweet science or music or anything else with me, or check me out showing my displeasure with 45, you follow me on Twitter, you know what it is. Brother JR at Brother JR76 on Twitter. Again, if you want to find out all things about Pound for Pound Boxing Report, please check out the blog page. P4pboxingreport.wordpress.com is the link. You check the right of the page, you will find links to the YouTube channel, as well as the pages on G+, Facebook, Tumblr, page for the Twitter, page to the Twitter handle. There's also the links for the Twitter handle, as well as links to where to listen to us on SoundCloud, Google Play Music, iTunes, Player.fm, Stitcher Radio. I'm missing somewhere else, but we're all over. Anyway, next week we would do a review of Golovkin Jacobs of Martin Gonzalez and his bout with Rungvisai of Cuadras and Carmona. We will also do a preview of boxing return to ESPN on the 23rd. Jason Quigley fighting Glenn Tapia. Marlena Esparza is fighting on that card, as well as Mauricio Herrera, who many felt defeated Danny Garcia a couple of years back. We will also do a preview of that lightweight bout that Daniel was talking about. Jorge Linares fighting Anthony Crawler in a rematch. And for those who do not know, that bout will be on Showtime live. So please check that out, March 25th live from Manchester. So we will talk about those bouts. For Jacob from Japanese Boxing, Daniel from the Inscriber, I'm your host, Michael. This has been episode 162 of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. I want to thank everybody who listened to us live, everybody who will listen to us when I put the podcast out. Everybody have a good evening. Good night.
Good night.
Peace.